Inflation is not temporary. It does not just happen by accident or bad luck. It is built into the very foundation of the financial system, and that is precisely why it never truly stops. Most people experience inflation as a frustration, a quiet erosion of what their money can buy, but very few understand what is actually driving it beneath the surface. What you see at the grocery store, at the gas pump, or on your rent statement is only the visible layer of something far more structural and deliberate. Understanding it changes everything about how you see money, value, and the economy you live inside every single day. The common explanation is simple. Inflation means prices go up, and while that is technically true, it barely scratches the surface of what is actually happening. Prices rising is the symptom. The cause runs much deeper. At its core, inflation is a story about the relationship between money and value. When the total amount of money circulating in an economy increases, but the total amount of goods and services available stays roughly the same, something has to give. Each individual unit of currency, each dollar, each pound, each euro, becomes slightly less powerful than it was before. It buys a little less. It represents a smaller share of real value. That is inflation in its most honest form. It is not simply prices climbing. It is money losing meaning. And this process does not happen randomly. It is the direct result of decisions made at the highest levels of the financial system. Decisions that ripple outward and eventually land in your wallet, your savings account, and your monthly budget. To understand inflation, you need to understand how money enters circulation in the first place. It does not simply appear. It moves through a carefully designed set of mechanisms, primarily controlled through three interconnected tools: interest rates, money supply management, and the lending system. When central banks, like the Federal Reserve in the United States, lower interest rates, borrowing becomes cheaper. Businesses take out loans to expand. Consumers borrow to spend. Banks issue more credit. All of this activity pushes more currency into the economy at a faster rate. More money chasing the same number of goods means each dollar does a little less work. Over time, when this process continues without a corresponding increase in actual productivity or output, the value of money declines. This is not a glitch. It is the predictable, measurable outcome of how the system is designed to function. Central banks monitor these levers constantly, raising and lowering rates in an attempt to balance growth against the erosion of purchasing power. But the balance is never perfect, and the erosion rarely fully stops. Here is the part that most mainstream explanations leave out entirely. When new money enters the economy, it does not reach everyone at the same time or in the same way. It flows first through banks, financial institutions, and capital markets. The people and organizations closest to that initial flow, the ones with access to cheap credit, investment portfolios, and financial assets, benefit before prices have had a chance to adjust. By the time that newly created money works its way down through the economy and reaches the average worker or household, prices have already moved. The cost of housing has already climbed. Groceries have already gotten more expensive. Services have already repriced. This is sometimes called the Cantillon effect, named after the economist Richard Cantillon, who identified this unequal distribution of monetary expansion centuries ago. The insight is simple but profound. Proximity to new money matters. Those who receive it first gain purchasing power. Those who receive it last, or not at all, find that the money they already had now buys less. The system does not distribute inflation equally. It concentrates its benefits at the top and spreads its costs across everyone else. This is where the abstract becomes personal. You work. You earn. Your paycheck might even increase slightly from year to year. But if your wages are rising at 2% annually, while inflation is running at 4 or 5%, you are not keeping up. You are falling behind, even if the number on your paycheck is technically larger. Your cost of living, rent, food, transportation, healthcare, utilities keeps climbing faster than your income. This is not a coincidence. It is the structural outcome of a system where money supply grows faster than real economic output. The result is a slow, quiet transfer of purchasing power away from people who hold cash and earn wages toward assets, toward property, toward investments that rise in value alongside or ahead of inflation. People who own things tend to stay ahead. People who only earn money tend to fall behind. Understanding this distinction is not about pessimism. It is about clarity. You cannot make informed decisions about your financial life if you do not understand the forces that are shaping it. Now comes the part that reframes everything. Inflation does not stop because the system is not designed to stop it. The modern economy is built on a foundation of continuous growth. Gross domestic product must expand. Corporate revenues must increase. Debt must be serviced and issued in ever larger quantities. All of this requires more money in circulation over time. A world of zero inflation, or worse, deflation, where prices fall and money gains value, is actually considered dangerous by most economists and central banks. When prices fall, consumers delay purchases, waiting for things to get cheaper. Businesses earn less. Investment slows. Debt becomes harder to repay in real terms. The entire system, which is built on the expectation of future growth, begins to seize up. So a controlled, moderate level of inflation is not a failure of economic management. It is the intended operating condition. Central banks have explicit inflation targets, typically around 2% per year, because that level of steady monetary erosion keeps the gears of the economy turning. Inflation, in this sense, is not a flaw in the design. It is the design. Recognizing this does not mean the system is evil or that nothing can be done. It means you are finally seeing it clearly, without the comfortable fiction that inflation is just an unfortunate accident that policymakers are always trying to fix. Once you understand how inflation actually works, you stop being surprised by it. You stop waiting for prices to come back down. You stop assuming that your savings account is protecting your wealth simply because the number in it is not decreasing. You start asking better questions. Where is my money relative to inflation? Am I holding assets that rise with monetary expansion, or am I holding cash that quietly loses value year after year? How do the decisions made by central banks and financial institutions affect my real purchasing power? These are not questions reserved for economists or financial professionals. They are questions every person navigating this economy needs to be asking. The information is not hidden. But it is rarely explained in plain, direct terms. Most financial education focuses on budgeting and saving without ever addressing the structural forces that make saving in cash alone a losing strategy over time. This video is a starting point, not a complete answer. The full picture of how money works, how wealth is built and eroded, and how individuals can position themselves more intelligently within this system goes much deeper. The information presented in this video is intended for educational and informational purposes only. It does not constitute financial advice, investment advice, or any form of professional financial guidance. The concepts discussed here are meant to help you develop a clearer understanding of economic systems and monetary policy. Every individual's financial situation is unique, and any decisions related to investing, saving, or managing money should be made in consultation with a qualified financial professional. Past economic patterns do not guarantee future outcomes. Always conduct your own research and seek professional advice before making any financial decisions.